Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. My dear students, how are you? I hope that all of you are fine. As you know, today we are going to tell you about the revisions in Literature 1, and the revisions will be from chapter number 8 up to chapter number 11. As you know, my students, that we are going to finish this course or this semester. And before we finish the semesters, I have to tell you about the revisions and the importance of this revisions that during this semesters I gave you the textbook as in English literatures, its history and its significance for the life of the English-speaking world. And this syllabus or material was talking about the course in literature in general. This course in literatures, as you know, that you are required to read, and it is introductory in nature, and also contains representative English literature from Anglo-Saxon times to the close of the Victorian era. So I can say that the aim or the aims of this course, as I told you at the beginning or from the beginning, that to have a brief summary of historical events and also social conditions in each period. This is one. Two, I can say that the aim is to study and analysis of every author's best works. So as you know that I gave you many writers or authors and the names of poets, also dramatists and novelists. During the chapters, you know that I gave you also the name of pioneers and masterpieces also, and also periods like Victorians and Restorations, all these things. So by the end now, I hope that you understand these things, and in order to help you also to answer in the exam, in the final exam, I want to tell you briefly about the chapters 8, 9, 10 up to 11, as you see here. So if you move here from the chapter number 8, if you remember that the title was Period of the Restorations. In period of the Restorations, I gave you history of the period and literary characteristics, and also one of the pioneer in this period was John Dryden, 1631 up to 1700. Finally, the summary of the Restoration period. From the beginning, you have, when you read these chapters, you have first of all to look at the definitions and for first of all the introductions of this period. From the introductions here, you have to know the age of the restorations. As you see here, I told you that the term of restorations period is applied to the decades from 1660. You have to also to keep in mind that this date is important. Not every date, but at least the first one. As you see here, the first decades from 1660. We mean here up to the end of the century. The second things between 1660 and 1700, over 500 plays were written in England. Also here we can underline that how many plays, or we can make a question here, true or false, or choose even, that during this age or period, over 1500 plays. I can change plays and put here novels or short story, for example, or I can change 500 to put 200 or 300 if the question is choose. I can make many choices here. So therefore, this is important also. Also, you have to know that restoration literatures in general is the English literatures which written during the historical period, commonly referred to as an English restorations, and also corresponds to the last years of Stuart in England, Scotland, and Ireland. So in general, I can say that the term is used to denote rarely the styles of literatures that centers on a celebrations of or reactions to the restored card of Charles II. So this is, or these introductions you have also to read and revise when you study or go to read the chapter number 8. Move to this also. There is a characteristics, and I thought, and I inform you that every or any characteristics when you are studying, you have to underlines and read it more and more. So first of all, as you know that it rhyme here, I told you that means a victor in English, also of reasons and tolerance over religious and political passions, and also about the characteristic now for its use of philosophy, reasons, wit, skepticism, and also refinement. Refinement here also it means improvements, or the meaning of refinement here to improvements means in another meaning. More emphasis also on science and natural facts. Here is important about the characteristics. More emphasis on science and natural facts. Witnessed also to the earliest beginning of the literary criticism. Uprising also the regaining of monarchy and also kingdom. So finally here, the appearance of the comedy of humors and also the comedy of manners was present at that period. So this is the main characteristic of restorations in this slices also, which is important. Also about the another sections in chapter number 8, one of the author or writers here as a critic also, John Dryden. John Dryden here, as you see here, the father of English criticism, first to teach English people to determine the merits of compositions upon principles. Before Dryden, only occasional utterances on the critical arts. Dryden's criticism was scattered by paid attentions to almost all literary forms and expressed his view on poetry. Finally, or before finally, dramatic poesy and also treatise on criticism. Others in preface to his critical works or to others. So, if I want to talk also about Johnny Dryden here. As a literary critic, I can say also translators, a playwright, who was appointed England's also first poet laureate in 1668. So we can talk about the influence here. One of the important things in John Dryden to know the Dryden's influence on literatures. What is or what can we say about these sections of Dryden here? That briefly, if I want to talk, this influence maybe summed up by noticing the three new elements which he brought into our literature, and these through three elements now you have to understand it. Now, the first one is the establishments of the heroic couplet. The first one is establishment of the heroic couplet as the fashion of satiric, didactic, and also descriptive poetry. This is one. The second is his developments of a direct, serviceable prose style, such as we still cultivate. And the third one, three, his developments of the art of literary criticism in his essays and in the numerous preface to his poems. So these three elements very important to understand the influence on literatures by John Dryden. So this is also everything about the chapters number 8, which I want you to focus on or revise also these things. First, restorations as periods. The second is literary characteristics of the period. And the third section is John Dryden's what he over or introduced to this period. This is now chapter number 9, and the title of chapter 9 is 18th century literatures in 1700 up to 1800. Very important also to know the date here of the period. That 1700, 1800, I can change these dates in order to make this title is false. You know that I can put here 18 up to 1900, for example, all right, to be wrong or false. So therefore, you have also to understand the title and the date of the titles before you go to the exam. So this is the contents also Augustan age or classical age, as you know, the second meaning of the 18th century here. The classic age, or now Alexander Pope, 1688 up to 1744, and also Samuel Johnson, 1709 up to 1784. These elements or contents, one by one, these sections we cover together. About the introductions, as usual, as you see, first of all, here, a classical age or Augustan age in literature, the age of good sense or the age of reasons. So Dryden belongs to the 17th century. He is also included to the classical or Augustan age, as during his time, the characteristics of his age had manifested themselves, and he himself represented them to a great extent. Other great literary figures who dominated this age successfully were Pope and Dr. Johnson. So, in this introductions, if I want to talk about Augustan literatures, as you know that it is a style of British literature, I can say that it produced during the reigns of queens and King George I and George II in the first half of the 18th century, and ending in the 1740s with the death of Alexander Pope and Jonathan Swift. So, one of the most critical elements of the 18th century, you have to know that was the increasing availability of the printed materials both for readers and authors. Books here also were appeared fairs and other fairs. All types of literatures were spread quickly in all directions. The newspaper began also. Furthermore, the newspaper were immediately compromised, and political factions created in this age or also the stories. So this is the introductions of this period. Let us go now to understand and also revise together Alexander Pope here. If we want to talk about Alexander Pope, first of all, before we talk about his war, I have to remind you about his age. Now, he born in 1688 up to 1744. He was an English poet and satirist during the Restorations. I can say that he was born in London, exactly into belonged to a Roman Catholic family. From a childhood, I told you that Pope suffered from a spinal deformity, and lifted him disabled and prevented him from ever growing past these things. So look at the words of Pope here: pastorals, the second essay of criticism as a didactic poem in heroic couplets, and also the third, the Rap of the Luck, as the masterpieces here, the Rap of the Luck, the masterpieces, which is worth reading for its descriptions and satire for dull cart life of England of that time. So I told you about the summary of the Rap of the Luck and these elements or the characters also you have to revise, because there is a questions belong to this poem. So therefore, to know who is the author of the poem, what is the style of it, the main characters, like these questions. Now, after Pope, now we are going to study also the William Black, 1757 up to 1827. Is it these date important to know the born and death of the writer or author? Yes, it is important also to understand and read and keep in mind these dates, because as I told you, this is in general, I can change these dates to make the question is false. All right, so you have to know the meaning and the date of the writer. Of all the romantic poets of the 18th century, we can say that Black is the most independent and the most original. The second is in his earliest work, I mean William Black, written when he was scarcely more than a child. He seems to go back to the Elizabethan songwriters for his models. So William Black here as a poet now, painter, also Victorian William Black work to bring about a change both in social order and also in the minds of men. I told you, William Black published his masterpieces, Songs of Innocence and Songs of Experience. If you remember that we talk about it as a gentle of his lyrics. It is a collection which followed by songs of experience containing a profound expressions of adult corruptions and also repressions. You know that I told you or inform you about his long list of works show relentless energy and drive of William Black as one of the most complex writers known. It is impossible to summarize his career. He was a combination of extremes, and his vision of civilizations as also one of as a mirrors of political turmoil of his era. So this is William Black, and also after William Black, we have to know and you have to remind also Henry Felding, 1707, 1754. All right, importance to know the dates here, or eight. Now, Feldings was the greatest of the new group of novels writers. He is a novelist, we can say, specialist in novels, and also one of the most artistic that our literatures has produced. All right. He was born in East Storr, Dorsetshire in the 1707. In contrast with Richardson, he was well educated, having spent several years at the famous Eton School and taken a degree in later at the University of Leiden in 1728. Moreover, he had a deeper knowledge of life, gained from his own varied and sometimes righteous experience. So Henry Fielding, now as an English author, was one of the greatest novel, as you know, of the 18th century also. His fiction, if I want to talk about his fictions, plays, essays, and also legal pamphlet, show he was a human also and witty man, and also a passion for reform and justice. So the English novel of today, as you know, was largely created by Henry Fielding and Samuel Richardson. So Richardson works, on the other hand, written in the form of series of letters and experiments of psychological analysis. But on the other hand, if I want to talk about Fielding's novel, in which the author himself tells the story and also controls the plot structures, or consider the first accurate portray of contemporary manners. So this is the difference between the style of Samuel Richardson, sorry, and Henry Fielding in novels. What else now in our study we have noted in this chapters? The first one, the Augustan or classical age, the meaning of ecclesiasm. This is the importance of the chapters, life and work of Alexander Pope and the greatest poets of the age. The second sections in this chapters was the revival of romantic poetry, the meaning of romanticism, the life and the work of William Black and the mystic. The third section was the first English novelists, the meaning and the history of modern novel, and the life and works of the pioneers, and the novels of Richardson, Felding, Joseph Andrew. So in every writers, you have to look at the masterpieces of him and read and revise it clearly, all right? Like Joseph Andrew, for example, one of the masterpieces of Henry Fielding's, if you remember, and also Richardson, Pamela Richardson and Joseph Andrew. I told you the differences and similarities of two novels which are written by them. All right, so this is chapter number 9 here, and we are going now to tell you about chapter number 10. In chapter number 10, as you see, the title is The Age of Romanticism, started in 1800 up to 1850. The contents of this chapter: the second creative period of the English literatures. The second section is literary characteristics of the age. The third section is poets of Romanticism. William Wordsworth, one of them, 1770 up to 1850. And final one is Samuel Taylor Coleridge, 1772 up to 1834. These sections we should cover, or we cover together, and we inform one by one what is the importance of it. So the first slice, as you see here, the second creative period of the English literatures was Romanticism. Romanticism here was an international artistic and philosophical movement. The second is the early Romantic period, coincided with the age of revolutions in America and France. The third things you have to know in the second creative period, the 1798 publication of lyrical ballads by Wordsworth and Coleridge, is often seen as the starting points of movements in the England. Finally, the strong holds of the movements were in England and Germany. So here Romanticism, if I want to talk about it, was an artistic, literary, musical also, and intellectual movement originated in Europe toward the end of the 18th century, and also in the most era was at its peak in approximate period from 1800, as I told you, up to 1850. So Romanticism here was characterized by the emphasis on emotions and also individualism, as well as glorifications of all the past and nature, preferring the medieval rather than the classical. It was partly a reaction of industrial revolutions, the aristocrate social and also political norms of the Age of Enlightenment, and also the scientific rationalizations of nature's all components of modernity. This is what you have to know about the chapter number 8 as the Age of Romanticism. Also, in this chapters we have one of the most important poets here, which is William Wordsworth. William Wordsworth, one of the important or the best poet in the Age of Romanticism, and we have many things to talk about him. First of all, born in 1770 up to 1850, now known as the father of Romantic poetry. Keep it in mind. Revolutionized poetry, wrote he as a revolutionary poet, also we consider him, wrote about ordinary life and natures in common language. Finally, by the time he was 13, he was an orphan. So William Wordsworth, um, you have to know that was an English romantic poet, and also with Samuel Taylor Coleridge with him helped to launch the Romantic Age in English literature together with their joint publications. If I want to talk about his poetry, you have to know that Wordsworth leads us to speak first of two difficulties which may easily prevent a just appreciations of the poet's work. So the first difficult is in reader here, who is often puzzled by Wordsworth's absolute simplicity. Wordsworth set himself, you have to know that, set himself to the task of freeing poetry from all its conceits of speaking the language of simple truth and also portraying man and nature. He is a poet of nature, we can say, Wordsworth, as they are. And also in this good work, we are apt to miss the beauty, the patience, the intensity also that hide themselves under his simplicity lines. So the second difficult also in the poet, not in the readers here. So Wordsworth, as I told you, one of the important poets in the 18th century. So also we have the Coleridge, another one. Samuel Coleridge, as you see, another poet here in this age. Samuel Coleridge was a philosopher, poet, and religious and political theorist. He was born in Devonshire, England. In 1795, Coleridge met poet William Wordsworth. Together were and whom he was to work closely. Coleridge and Wordsworth cooperatively published the Lyrical Palace in 1798, marking the rise of the British Romantic movements. Finally, in 1817, biography literature, a fusion of the autobiography, literary criticism, and also religious and philosophical theory was published. So here, Samuel Taylor Coleridge, as you know, English poet, literary critic, philosophy or philosopher. What I can say about him, he wrote a poem of the rhyme of the ancient mariner, and consider of the important poems for him, and also Kubla Khan, written as well as by the major prose of work. His critical work, you have to know that, especially on William Shakespeare, was highly influential, and also he helped introduce German idealistic philosophy to English-speaking culture. Coleridge also coined many familiar words and the phrases, including suspicions of the disbelief. He had also a major influence on American transcendentalism. The rhyme of the ancient mariner is Coleridge's chief contribution to the lyrical palette, and I told you that also the characters and the style, the structures of this poem is important. When you read in your textbook, the rhyme of the ancient marine is one of the world's masterpieces of Coleridge. Um, so introduces the reader's supernatural realm by this poem, and also the overhanging card of the polar spirits and magic breed also present here. So this is Coleridge, and after Coleridge we have P.P. Shelley in August 1792 up to 18 July in July 1822. Was born in West Sussex in England. He was from a wealthy and conservative family. His father was a member of parliament. At 12, Shelley joined Eton, a prestigious school for poets. As you see in reading Shelley's longer poems, one must remember that there are in this poet two distinct men. One, the wanderer seeking ideal beauty and forever unsatisfied. The author, the unbalanced reformer, also seeking the overthrow of the present institutions and establishing of the universal happiness. So P.P. Shelley, you have to know that one of the major English Romantic poets, American writer or critics took many things about P.P. Shelley, and also what he achieved as a fame during his lifetime. This is what we want to talk about Shelley here. And now we are going to talk about Charles Lamb. Charles Lamb, as you see here, was born in London 10th February 1775 and was an English essayist best known for his essays of Elia and for the children's books. Lamb was also the son of Elizabethan Phil and John Lamb. He was the youngest child with sisters Mary, a brother John, and four other siblings. So Charles Lamb, as English prose writer, Charles Lamb is also more interesting writers than his influence might one of the suspect. Lamb's also greatest achievements, if I want to talk about his achievements now, his remarkable letters and also the essays that he wrote under the, let me say, syndrome, Elia for London's magazines, also was founded in 1820. His style, if I want also to talk about his style is highly personal and mannered, and its functions being to create and delineate the persona of Elia, and also writing though sometimes simple and is never plain. The essays of Charles Lamb, the essay conjure up with humors and sometimes with pathos or old acquaintance, and also they are recalled senses from childhood and from later life. So this is what I want to say about Charles Lamb as a writer in the Romanticism in these chapters. Now we are going to the final chapter, chapter number 11. And in the contents of these chapters, you see introductions, historical summary, the poets of Victorian Age, Alfred Tennyson's 1809 up to 1892, and finally section will be Robert Browning 1812 up to 1889. Chapter number 11 here about the Victorian Age. Victorian Age is the title of this chapters. You know, you have to know that the 19th century, I can say that was one of the rapid developments and the change, far swifter than in the previous centuries. So during this period, England changed from a rural agricultural country to an urban industrialized one. So this involved massive dislocations and radically altered the natures of society. It took many years for both governments and people to adjust the new conditions. These introductions will go and put us in this slice here, early Victorian age. In early Victorian age, if you see here the characteristics of the age, sorry, the characteristics of the age felt first felt impact of industrial revolutions. The second is implications of science, not good for philosophy and religious. Third, romantic philosophy still there, but was at odds with the rest of world. Finally, out of conflicts came a literature of questioning and doubt. So these characteristics, I can say that while the country saw economic progress, poverty and exploitations were also equal a part of it. In these characteristics, I can see that the gap between the rich and the poor increased significantly, and also the drive for material and commercial success was seen to propagate a kind of a moral decay in the society itself. So the changing landscape of the country was another concern in this characteristic. While the earlier phase of Romanticism saw a celebrations of the countryside and the rich landscape of the flora and fauna, the Victorian era saw a changing of landscape to one of industrials and also factors. So this is or these characteristics is important also to revise and to look at it. Now the second things we have to know about Alfred Tennyson's or Lord Tennyson. Alfred Tennyson's here first part Baron Tennyson, 6 August 1809, 6 October up to 6 October 1892, was Poet Laureate of the United Kingdom and is one of the most popular English poets. Now, Alfred Lord here, as we say that the most famous poet also in English literatures, many of his poems are standards of 19th century literatures and are critical and popular favorite. The body of critical work on him is immense, and also although some of his work is seen as too sentimental today, and his intellectual contributions to poetry and metaphysical or metaphysics are undeniable. So this is what we know about Alfred here, and we are going to talk about Robert Browning. Robert Browning, 1812 up to 1889. Robert Browning, one of the most eminent poets, he approached in his language and also a measure of the poetry of our times. His writing is anti-romantic. I can change it to make a romantic, not anti-romantic, with railway train and also cigar, and the language is often colloquial and even slang. The poem My Last Dash is a prime example of the dramatic monology form. So, as a poet and a playwright, I can say that the dramatic monology put him among the foremost Victorian poets. His poems are noted for irony, characterizations, dark humor, I told you, social commentary, historical setting, and also challenging vocabulary and syntax. His career began well, but shrank for a times. So his critical reputations also rest mainly on his dramatic monologue, and in which the words not only convey setting and actions, but reveal the speaker's characters. You know that. So in a Browning monologue, unlike a sololyric, the meaning is not what the speaker's voluntary reveals, but what the indifferently gives away, or usually while a rationalist past actions or special pleading his case to a silent auditor. So this is also a good examples. If you read My Last Dashes, you will find a good examples of the dramatic monologue by him. This is also Charles Dickens here. And Charles Dickens, as you see, was born in Portsmouth on 7th of February 1812 into a middle-class family of civil servant John Dickens, who was an open-hearted and kind man. Charles spent his childhood in the atmosphere of love and friendship, although endured hard times later on. So Charles Dickens also was a writer and social critic. He creates some of the world's best known fictional characters, and also regarded by many as the greatest novelists of the Victorian era. Keep it in mind. He also his works enjoyed unprecedented popularity during his lifetime, and by the 20th century, also critics and scholars had recognized him as a literary genius. His novels and short stories are widely read today. All these things we said before. So Dickens' literary success began with the 1836 serial publications of the Pickwick Papers, and Charles Dickens, I can see that, wrote 15 novels. How many? 15 novels Charles Dickens wrote. He also wrote short stories, essays, articles, and also novella. So let us go now to The last one is Matthew Arnold, also in 1822, 1888. Matthew Arnold, as you see here, was a British poet and cultural critic who worked as an inspector of schools, and he was also one of the chief Victorian poets. Matthew Arnold being characterized as a siege writer, a type of writers who just and also instruct the readers on contemporary social issue. Matthew Arnold here, on another hand, we can see that the greatest work as a writer, I told you that he published his first book of poetry, and also his literary career really took off in 1852 when he began to publish more poetry volume. The second volume included a verse drama, also though I can say attentions for the poetry which he continued to write until his death. Arnold was well known as a culturally critic, publishing volume like Cultural and Energy in 1869, and today his work is as a critic is as well known as his poetry is. This is what can we say about Matthew Arnold. And finally here, the summary of the Victorian Age. In the summary of the Victorian Age, I mean the summary of chapter number 11. The old chapter number 11, first section is the year 1830, is generally placed at the beginning of this period, but its limits are very identified. The second things you have to know that the importance of Wordsworth, which had written his best work in the sections we read, the other Romantic poets Coleridge, Shelley, Keats, and Byron had passed away in this century, I mean the Victorian century or age. So the Victorian age produced two great poets, Tennyson and Browning, and everyone we discussed before. So finally, the age as a whole is remarkable for the variety and excellence of its prose. A study of all the great writers of the period reveals four general characteristics. The characteristics, the writers, the age, the best word, all right, the author, the day, this date, all these things in every chapters you have to focus and revise also. In briefly or summary, we discussed now these chapters as a revisions, or I want just my aim is to also inform you about the importance of these subjects, which is the most important subjects. I hope finally here that you understand every points here, and also by yourself you can revise. And I also want to tell you that I will prepare some questions as a revisions, and we will discuss together in next Zoom in order to help you also to understand the questions of the final exam and how to answer about it. So now time is over, and let me see now, time to say goodbye and see you soon, inshallah.